In August of 2015, Leo Vance set out on his last hike. He disappeared in the rugged backcountry of the Mineral King region in the Sequoia National Forest, one of the most vast and unforgiving wilderness areas in the American West. When he failed to return on the evening of August 19th, his older sister Sarah, a pragmatic nurse, allowed a single night for a plausible delay before her clinical calm gave way to a gnawing dread. The call to the National Park Service was made at 7 a.m. sharp on the 20th. The initial response was swift. His silver Toyota Tacoma was found at the trailhead parking lot, undisturbed. The official report from the responding ranger was methodical. No signs of forced entry or struggle. Vehicle locked. Personal items, including a paperback novel and a half-full water bottle, visible on passenger seat. The massive search operation that spun up over the next 48 hours involved the NPS SAR team, the Tulare County Sheriff's Office, and a volunteer unit from the Sierra Madre. Helicopters chopped the thin mountain air, their thermal cameras scanning the landscape for any sign of body heat, but found nothing. By the third day, the discovery of his campsite only deepened the mystery. The state of the scene was so bizarre, it became a point of contention among the search teams. His tent was neatly zipped, but inside, his sleeping bag and sleeping pad remained in their compressed sacks. His Jetboil stove and a fuel canister were packed away in their original box. A single, unopened packet of dehydrated chili mac sat beside it. It was, as the SAR team leader noted in his official log, inconsistent with an overnight stay or even the intent to stay. It appears the subject either never made camp or meticulously packed up to leave, then vanished with only the clothes on his back and his primary pack. The behavior of the canine units added another layer of high strangeness. The two German shepherds, Brutus and Apollo, picked up Leo's scent strongly around the campsite, following it with confidence for nearly 2 miles along a faint game trail. The trail terminated at the edge of a 300-foot vertical drop known locally as Granite Falls, but Leo's scent didn't go over the edge. According to the handler's detailed report, the dogs became agitated, circling the same 10-foot area at the cliff's edge before giving up entirely. It was as if he'd been lifted straight up into the air. The handler, a man with 20 years of experience, later told Corbin, "I've seen dogs lose a trail in water or on high rock, but never like this. It was like the trail just stopped." The official search lasted for 3 grueling weeks before being scaled back. Frank Gable, the SAR coordinator, sat with the Vance family and laid out the grim reality. They had gritted hundreds of square miles, rappelled into crevasses, and scanned every inch of the river canyon below the falls. Nothing. The mountains. "Sometimes they just don't give people back," he had said, his voice heavy with a resignation that Sarah refused to accept. For the next 8 years, she became the keeper of her brother's memory. She ran a Facebook page, Find Leo Vance, which evolved from a hub for search updates into a memorial. Every year on his birthday, she would post his smiling college graduation photo. Theories swirled on online forums dedicated to the missing. A tragic fall into an unseen mineshaft, a sudden and silent mountain lion attack, or even that he had been a willing participant in his own disappearance. None of it felt right to Sarah. It was the campsite that haunted her. It was too neat, too orderly. It was a scene, she always insisted, not a campsite. The world moved on, but for the Vance family, time remained frozen in that terrible August of 2015. Then, on a crisp September morning in 2023, the silence finally broke. 2 wildlife biologists, Dr. Alicia Ray and her graduate assistant, were deep in a rarely traversed section of Sequoia National Forest, surveying the endangered Sierra Nevada red fox. Days of bushwhacking had led them to a secluded basin, shadowed by a colossal redwood that had stood for millennia. That's when they saw it, a pale shape suspended high in the canopy. At first, Dr. Ray thought it was a hornet's nest or storm debris. But as they raised their binoculars, the truth sharpened into focus. A human skeleton, hanging upside down by its ankles from a thick, weathered rope, 50 feet above the forest floor. The scene was so grotesque, so violently out of place in the serene wilderness, that for a moment neither could speak. When Dr. Ray finally reached for the satellite phone, her voice trembled, the calm of science shattered by horror. The discovery sent a shockwave through the Tulare County Sheriff's Office. This wasn't just a missing hiker. This was a scene of unimaginable strangeness, a macabre display hidden for nearly a decade. Detective Miles Corbin, a veteran of the department with tired eyes and a mind that thrived on untangling knots, was assigned the reopened case. He stood at the base of the giant redwood and stared up at the grim tableau. Forensic crews specializing in high-angle recovery worked for hours, their movements slow and deliberate as they documented the scene before rappelling down with the fragile remains. The bones were bleached white by 8 years of sun and rain, and tattered remnants of a blue Patagonia jacket, specifically mentioned in Leo's gear list, Sarah had provided clung to the skeleton. A DNA comparison with dental records brought the long wait to a heart-wrenching end. The remains belonged to Leo Vance. The cause of death, a report from the medical examiner would later reveal, was not from exposure or a fall. It was from 2 distinct fractures to the occipital bone, caused by blunt force trauma from behind. Leo had been murdered before he was ever hoisted into that tree. Corbin dove back into the 8-year-old case files, a frustrating collection of dead ends. He spread the old maps and reports across a large table, the paper yellowed at the edges. Corbin focused on the rope. The lab report confirmed it was old, a thick 3-strand nylon type commonly used in ranching, not for climbing. It was tied with a series of complex knots, a bowline on a bight, and a series of taut-line hitches that suggested a specific, practiced skill set, perhaps of a sailor or a rancher. He sent fragments of the rope and the tattered clothing to the FBI lab in Quantico. He also began the Herculean task of reviewing anyone who had been in that remote area of Vufas, the park during the summer of 2015. Most were dead ends, but one report, filed by a pair of hikers from Fresno a week before Leo went missing, mentioned a hostile man who emerged from the woods and warned them they were trespassing on sacred ground several miles from any private property. The description was vague. Older, bearded, wearing buckskin. They had dismissed him as a harmless eccentric, but the encounter had unnerved them enough to report it. The first real break came not from the FBI lab, but from a dusty evidence box labeled Vance, LEO Personal Effects. Tucked inside an envelope was a small, cheap disposable camera he had brought with him. In 2015, the photos had been developed and deemed irrelevant, mostly scenic shots. But Corbin, with the benefit of knowing where Leo was ultimately found, noticed something in the background of the very last photo. It was a picture of a mule deer, but far behind it, partially obscured by a sugar pine, stood the corner of a dilapidated cabin with a rusty tin roof. It wasn't on any park maps. It had to be an old mining claim or an illegal structure. Using the geographic features in the photo, Corbin and a team of park rangers spent 2 days scouring the area near where Leo's camp was found. Finally, tucked away in a hidden, overgrown canyon, they found it. Inside the dilapidated structure, it felt as though time had stopped. A thick layer of dust covered a makeshift table, a wood-burning stove, and a simple cot. But it was what was on the walls that made Detective Corbin's blood run cold. Scrawled in charcoal were dozens of crude, disturbing depictions of animals, trees, and unsettlingly, human figures hanging from them by their feet. In a corner, half buried under a pile of rotting blankets, was a rusty toolbox. Inside were several lengths of thick nylon rope, identical in make and composition to the one used to hang Leo's body. The team also found a stack of old, water-stained journals filled with rambling, paranoid entries about trespassers and the need for cleansing the forest. The writer referred to himself only as the Caretaker. The journals spoke of a sacred duty to protect the mountains from the noise of outsiders. One entry, dated August 14, 2015, described encountering a young buck with a blue pack who didn't belong and needed to be returned to the trees to feed the soil as was intended. The journals provided a name, scrawled on the inside cover of the oldest volume, Silas Blackwood. Public records painted a picture of a man who existed on the fringes of society. He was in his late 60s and had inherited the old defunct mining claim from his father decades ago. He had a history of minor offenses, poaching, illegal trapping, and a few heated confrontations with hikers who had accidentally strayed onto his property, matching the 2015 hiker's report. He was a ghost, a recluse known to the few locals in the nearby gateway town of Three Rivers as the Mountain Man, a strange and sometimes menacing figure to be avoided. He had no driver's license, no social security number, and paid for his meager supplies with cash. Finding him would be like finding a shadow in a forest of shadows. Corbin issued a bolo, but he knew Blackwood wasn't on any main road. An elderly shopkeeper in Three Rivers, a man who had been there for 50 years, finally provided the crucial tip. After being shown a grainy, decades-old DMV photo of Blackwood, he nodded slowly. He remembered Blackwood talking about a winter shelter he used, a cave system further up the mountain, near the frigid waters of Eagle Lake. Said the caves kept him safe, the shopkeeper recalled. Safe from the world. The final confrontation was as tense and quiet as the forest itself. Corbin, accompanied by 2 deputies and a park ranger, all clad in tactical gear, hiked for 6 hours to the coordinates. They found the cave entrance hidden behind a thick curtain of overgrown ivy. Inside, a small, smoky fire cast flickering shadows on the damp stone walls. Silas Blackwood was there, a gaunt figure with a long, matted gray beard and eyes that burned with a cold, clear fire. He wasn't surprised to see them. He simply looked up from the squirrel he was skinning with a hunting knife. He didn't resist. He laid the knife down slowly and placed his hands behind his back. During the long, silent hike down the mountain, he said nothing. It wasn't until he was in the sterile interrogation room that he finally spoke, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. He confessed to everything. He said he had watched Leo for a day, angered by his presence and the bright colors of his modern gear. He confronted him at his camp, and when Leo calmly tried to leave, Blackwood struck him from behind with a heavy, smooth river rock. He was polluting the silence, Blackwood said, his gaze unwavering. I just helped the mountain take back what belongs to it. I gave him a proper burial in the arms of the great tree, where he could be part of the cycle. The trial of Silas Blackwood was a somber affair, a strange and unsettling window into a mind completely divorced from reality. His journals were read aloud in court, their chilling passages about his self-appointed role as a divine guardian of the wilderness echoing in the silent room. He showed no emotion, as photos of Leo's joyful, smiling face were displayed on a large screen, followed by the grim, clinical images of the crime scene. His public defender attempted an insanity defense, but the prosecution argued that his actions staging the campsite, hiding the body in such a bizarre and inaccessible way, and evading notice for 8 years, were proof of a cunning and methodical mind. Sarah Vance gave a victim impact statement that left the courtroom in tears, speaking not of hatred, but of the profound, unending loss of a brilliant young man who loved the very wilderness that had been twisted into his execution chamber. Blackwood was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Today, the Mineral King area remains as beautiful and wild as ever. Hikers still walk its trails, drawn by the same promise of adventure and solitude that called to Leo Vance. Yet for those who know the story, the silence between the ancient trees feels different. It feels heavier, weighted with the memory of a young man who came seeking peace and became a part of the forest's darkest secret. The giant redwood where he was found still stands, a silent monument to the tragedy, its highest branches reaching for the California sky. It serves as a stark reminder that even in the majestic landscapes we see as a refuge from the world, true darkness can take root, and that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones who walk on two legs. His story lingers in the mountain air, a whisper on the wind, a testament to a life cut short and a mystery that hung, quite literally, in the balance for 8 long years. Another name lost to the wilderness. Subscribe before the next one disappears.